In today's video, we will start with finding the buried treasure from the map we found in yesterday's video. And after that, if we have some time left, we will finally be using the mine we completed yesterday. And the whole time I'll be reading through the emails you guys sent in and giving my honest thoughts on each one. Today's first email goes by the title, "I cut off my brother, but now I'm stuck in the middle. My name is not important, but my situation is, and I have been sitting on this for months now, going back and forth in my own head without making any real progress. So I figured I would write it out and send it somewhere, and here I am. I'm a 24-year-old woman, and about 8 months ago, I made the decision to cut contact with my brother. He is 27. We grew up in the same house, went to the same schools, and for a long time I genuinely considered him one of my closest people. But over the years, things between us shifted in a way that I could not ignore anymore. I am not going to get into every detail of what happened, because honestly it would take all day, and I do not think it changes the core of what I am dealing with now. What I will say is that there was a pattern of behaviour from him that left me feeling small, dismissed, and honestly a little bit like I was losing my mind. He has a way of twisting things. Conversations that start about something I am upset about somehow always end with me apologising. He minimises everything I feel, and when I try to hold my ground, he finds a way to make me the difficult one. The last real falling out we had was over something that had been building for years. I had finally reached my limit, and instead of trying to smooth it over again like I always did, I told him I needed space. He did not take that seriously at first. He sent a few messages that were more passive than apologetic, the kind of messages where someone technically reaches out but makes it clear they think you are overreacting. After a while, I stopped responding altogether, and eventually he stopped trying. Here is where it gets complicated. He still lives at home with our mother. He's 27 years old and has been living there on and off for years, and right now he is firmly in an on stretch with no clear sign of that changing. My mother is 58, and she and I have always had a decent relationship. Not perfect, but real. She is the kind of person who shows up. She calls on birthdays, she asks about my life and actually listens. She is not the reason I pulled back from my brother, and I do not want her to be collateral damage in a decision I made for my own sanity. But here is the problem. He is there. He is always there. When I call my mum, sometimes he's in the background. When she mentions her week, his name comes up because they are living in the same space and sharing a daily life. Once I called her on a Sunday afternoon, and he answered her phone because she had left it in the kitchen. I hung up without saying anything, and then sat with that feeling for the rest of the day. I have not told my mother the full extent of why I stopped speaking to him. She knows there is tension, she's not naive, but I have never sat down and explained to her exactly what the boundary is and why it exists. Part of me does not want to put her in the middle of it. She loves both of us, and I know that asking her to manage the situation would be unfair. She should not have to schedule her phone calls around making sure her son is not in the room. But the alternative is what I am currently doing, which is tiptoeing around every conversation and bracing myself every time I reach out to her. I want to be able to call my mother and just talk to her without it feeling like a minefield. I want to visit her eventually, and right now I genuinely do not know how I would handle that, because he would be there, in her home, where he lives. I am not second-guessing my decision to cut contact with him. That part feels settled. What does not feel settled is everything around it. How do I maintain a real relationship with my mother when he is such a constant presence in her daily life? Do I talk to her about it honestly? Do I keep managing it quietly and just accept that it is going to be uncomfortable sometimes? And what happens when something comes up? A holiday, a family event, something she wants us all to be at together? I do not have answers to any of this, and I would really appreciate some outside perspective. Alright, first of all, I want to say that what you did took a lot. Cutting contact with a sibling is not a small thing, especially one you grew up with. That is a decision that most people spend a long time wrestling with before they actually go through with it. So the fact that you got there and held that line says a lot about how serious the situation was for you. Now, the thing you are actually asking about, which is your mother, I think you already know what the right move is here, and I think you are just looking for someone to confirm it. You need to talk to her. Not in a way that forces her to choose sides, not in a way that makes her feel like she has to manage the situation for you, but just honestly. Tell her where you are at. Tell her that your relationship with her matters to you, and that you want to protect it, but that things are going to feel a little different for a while because of where things stand with your brother. She is your mother. She's probably already noticed that something is off, and leaving her to fill in the blanks on her own is not doing either of you any favours. A real conversation, even an uncomfortable one, is going to hold up a lot better long term than quiet avoidance. As for the bigger stuff, the holidays and the family events, you do not have to solve all of that right now. Take it one thing at a time. You made a decision that was right for you, and maintaining your relationship with your mum does not cancel that out. The two things can exist at the same time. It is just going to take some navigation, and that is okay. Thanks for writing in. I hope the conversation with your mum goes the way you need it to. The next one is titled, My Parents Are Falling Apart and I Don't Know Where to Stand. I'm going to start by saying that I am not really sure what I'm looking for by writing this. Maybe just to say it somewhere outside of my own head. I am 19 years old, and I still live at home while I attend a local college, which means I have had a front row seat to something that I never really wanted to watch. My parents are falling apart. They have been married for 22 years. Growing up, they were not the kind of parents who were overly affectionate with each other, but they were steady. They argued sometimes, like everyone does, but nothing that ever felt serious, nothing that made me worried. The house was just normal. Dinner happened, weekends happened, life happened, and they were both just there, doing what parents do. Something shifted about 2 years ago, and at first I told myself I was imagining it. The house got quieter in a way that is hard to explain, not peaceful quiet. A kind of tense quiet where you can feel something sitting in the air between people. My parents stopped eating dinner together most nights. My dad started spending more time in the garage, which was not unusual for him, but it became less of a hobby and more of somewhere to disappear to. My mother started going to bed earlier and earlier. They were not fighting. They were just not really talking either. Then, about 6 months ago, it started becoming more visible. I came home from class one afternoon and walked into what was clearly the tail end of a real argument. They both went quiet when I came through the door, but I could see it in the way they were standing, in the way neither of them looked at me right away. My mum left the room, and my dad just said he was going back outside. I stood in the kitchen alone and did not really know what to do with myself. Since then, it has happened more than once. I have not walked in on anything dramatic, but I can feel the cycle of it. Things will be fine for a week or two, almost normal, and then something happens and the air changes again. Last month my mum cried at the kitchen table, and when I asked her what was wrong, she said she was just tired. She was not just tired. I know what just tired looks like on her, and that was not it. Neither of them has talked to me directly about what is going on. I think they are both trying to protect me from it, which I understand, and also find a little bit frustrating because I am 19 years old, and I already know something is wrong. The not knowing is almost worse than knowing, because my brain fills in the gaps with worst-case scenarios. I do not know what I'm supposed to do with myself in all of this. I feel guilty leaving the house sometimes, like if I go out I am abandoning them somehow, which I know is not rational. I also feel guilty staying, because being there and watching it is wearing me down in a way I did not expect. I have started avoiding coming home straight after class, which is new for me. I used to actually like being home. I am not asking anyone to fix this. I know this is my parents' situation, and it is not mine to solve. But I'm right in the middle of it physically and emotionally, and I do not know how to take care of myself while it is happening around me. Any thoughts would be appreciated. There is a lot to sit with in that email, and I want to start by saying that what you are feeling makes complete sense. Being 19 and living inside a house where something is clearly breaking down while nobody is actually talking to you about it is genuinely a hard position to be in. The guilt you feel about leaving, the guilt you feel about staying, the way you have started avoiding home, all of that is a very human response to a situation that has no clean answer. Here is the thing though, this is not your weight to carry. I know that is easy to say and a lot harder to actually feel, but your parents' relationship is theirs. Whatever is happening between them is something they are going to have to work through together, or not, and that outcome is not determined by whether you're sitting in the kitchen or out with your friends. You're allowed to protect your own peace while this is happening. That is not abandonment. That is just surviving something that is hard. If you feel up to it, I think having a calm and honest conversation with one of them, whichever one you feel closer to in this moment, and just saying that you have noticed something is going on and that you are there if they want to talk could be worth doing. Not to get answers, not to fix anything, just to open a door so you're not all pretending around each other. And if things get heavier, please talk to someone outside the house, a friend, a counsellor, anyone. You should not be processing all of this alone. This next email is titled, "I love my boyfriend, but living with his attitude is exhausting." I want to start by saying that I am not someone who gives up on people easily. I think that is important context for everything I am about to say. I'm 26 years old and I have been with my boyfriend for just over 2 years. He is 28. In a lot of ways, things between us are genuinely good. We have fun together. We have similar values. We talk about the future in a way that feels real and not just hypothetical. I'm not writing this because I think the relationship is doomed. I am writing this because there is one thing that has been quietly wearing me down for a long time now, and I do not know how to fix it. My boyfriend is passive-aggressive, and I do not mean that in a casual throwaway way. I mean it in the way where I have started to notice myself tiptoeing around certain topics, because I already know what the response is going to look like, and I am tired of bracing for it. It started small enough that I did not really clock it at first. Early in the relationship, when something bothered him, he would just go quiet. Not the kind of quiet where someone needs a minute to collect their thoughts. The kind of quiet that has a temperature to it. I would ask if he was okay and he would say yes, and then nothing would actually be okay for the rest of the evening. I figured it was just how we process things. Some people need time. I gave him time. But over 2 years, the pattern has become harder to overlook. When something upsets him, whether it is something I did or something completely unrelated to me, he does not say so. What he does instead is become slightly unreachable. One-word answers, a certain flatness in his voice. He will do things like agree to plans and then go through them in a way that makes it clear he does not want to be there. He will say things like, "It's fine," in a tone that communicates very plainly that it is not fine. And when I push and ask what is actually going on, he either deflects or tells me I am reading too much into things. The part that gets to me the most is the way it plays out after we've had a disagreement. We will talk something through, or at least I will think we have, and then a few days later there will be this residue. Small things. He will forget to do something he said he would do. He'll be slightly less warm than usual. He'll make a comment that has just enough edge to it that I notice it, but not enough that I can directly address it without sounding like I'm inventing problems. It is like living with the echo of an argument that has technically already ended. I've brought this up to him directly twice now. The first time he apologised and said he did not realise he was doing it. Things were better for about 3 weeks and then slowly drifted back. The second time I brought it up, he got defensive. He said that I was labelling his behaviour in an unfair way and that sometimes he just has bad days and I should not take everything personally. That response sat badly with me, not because I think he was lying exactly, but because it felt like a door closing. I do not think he is a bad person. I genuinely do not. I think this is probably something that is deeply ingrained in him, maybe from how he grew up, maybe just from years of handling things this way. But I am starting to feel the toll of it. I catch myself rehearsing conversations before I have them. I monitor his mood when he comes home from work before I decide what I'm going to say. That is not something I ever used to do, and I do not like that it has become a habit. I am not sure what I am asking for exactly. Maybe just to know if this is something that can actually change, or if I am holding on to an idea of what things could be while ignoring what they actually are. That last line you wrote is the one I keep coming back to, because I think you already have a sense of the answer, and you're just hoping someone will give you a different one. I am not going to do that, because I do not think it would actually help you. Passive aggression is one of those things that is really hard to address in a relationship, not because it is the worst thing a person can do, but because it is so easy to deny. It leaves just enough room for the other person to say you are imagining things, and that is genuinely destabilizing over time. The fact that you are monitoring his mood before you speak, that you're rehearsing conversations in advance, that is not a small thing. That is your nervous system adapting to an environment that does not feel fully safe, and that matters. You have brought it up twice. The first time he acknowledged it, the second time he pushed back. What happens the third time is going to tell you a lot. If you have that conversation and he genuinely engages with it, if he is willing to look at this honestly and maybe even talk to someone about it, then there is something to work with. But if the response is more deflection, more you're taking it personally, then I think you need to take that seriously as an answer about what this relationship is going to continue to look like. You said you are not someone who gives up on people easily. That is a good quality. Just make sure it is not also the thing that keeps you in a situation longer than is good for you. Thanks for writing in. I hope the next conversation goes better than the last one. This one is named, "Am I wrong for considering breaking up with my boyfriend over prom?" Okay, before anyone jumps to conclusions, I want to explain the full situation, because I know how this sounds on the surface, and I promise there is more to it than just prom. I am 17 years old, and I have been with my boyfriend for about 10 months. He is also 17. For the most part, our relationship has been really good. He is kind and we get along well, and I have genuinely enjoyed being with him. But there has been this one ongoing issue that has been building for a while, and prom ended up being the moment where it all came to a head. Here is some background. My boyfriend has a best friend, a girl, who he has known since middle school. I want to be clear that I have never had a problem with their friendship in general. I understand that people have close friends of the opposite gender, and that is completely normal. My issue has never been with her existence in his life. My issue is with the specific pattern that I have noticed over the past several months. Whenever there is something that I am looking forward to, something that matters to me, he has a habit of making decisions that involve her, without really considering how I might feel about it. It started with small things. A concert I'd mentioned wanting to go to, he ended up going with her before I got a chance to bring it up again. A restaurant I had been talking about for weeks, he took her there on one of their hangouts. Each time I said something, he told me I was being jealous and that I needed to trust him. And I do trust him. That is not the point. Prom felt different because prom is not a casual thing. I had been looking forward to it for a long time, the way most people do. We had loosely talked about going together, nothing formal, but it was understood. Then, about 3 weeks before, He told me that he had already made a group plan with a bunch of friends and that his best friend was going to be in the group and that the plan was already set. He did not ask me. He did not check if the group worked for me. He just told me and then seemed genuinely confused when I was upset about it. What made it worse was that when I tried to explain why it bothered me, he said I was making prom into a bigger deal than it needed to be and that I should just be happy we were all going together. He used the word dramatic at one point, which is a word I really dislike being called, especially when I am trying to have a calm conversation about something that matters to me. We went to prom. It was fine on the surface, but I spent most of the night feeling like an afterthought, which is not a great feeling on a night that is supposed to be memorable. Since then, I have been doing a lot of thinking. I do not want to break up with him over prom specifically, but I think prom was the clearest example yet of something that has been true for a while. I feel like I consistently come second in his priorities, and every time I bring it up, I am made to feel like the problem is my reaction rather than the actual situation. I am 17. I know I have a lot to learn, but I do not think I am wrong for wanting to feel like I matter. Am I overthinking this? Should I give it more time? I genuinely do not know. You're not overthinking this, and you're not wrong for feeling the way you feel. I want to say that clearly before anything else. Here is what I am actually hearing in that email. It is not really about prom. You said it yourself. Prom was just the moment where a pattern that had already been building became impossible to ignore. And that pattern, where your feelings consistently come in second, and your reaction to that is framed as the problem, that is the real thing worth paying attention to. Being called dramatic when you're trying to have a calm and honest conversation is not okay. That kind of response shuts things down before they can actually be resolved. And if it happens regularly, it starts to make you question your own reactions, even when they are completely reasonable. That is not a dynamic you want to settle into long term. Now you are 17, and this is a relationship, not a life sentence. You do not have to make some enormous final decision right now, but I do think you need one honest conversation with him where you lay out exactly what you told me. Not just the prom situation, but the whole pattern, and you see how he responds. Not whether he apologizes, but whether he actually listens, whether he takes it seriously, whether he is willing to look at his own behavior honestly. If he does, then there is something to work with. If he calls you dramatic again, then I think you have your answer. You do not sound like someone who needs more time. You sound like someone who already knows what she's seeing. Trust that. This email is titled, "My dentist pulled my tooth without telling me he was going to." I want to preface this by saying that I am not someone who is easily rattled. I have been through enough in my life that I generally handle difficult situations without falling apart. But what happened to me at the dentist last week has left me genuinely shaken, and also furious, and I am still not entirely sure what to do about it. I'm 34 years old. I have had ongoing issues with one of my back molars for about 2 years now. It has needed work done on it more than once, and I have been through the process of fillings and temporary fixes and conversations about what the long-term plan should be. The tooth has been a problem, I knew that. But every time I had seen a dentist about it, the conversation was just that, a conversation. Options were discussed. I asked questions. I made decisions based on information. Last week I went in for what I understood to be an examination and a discussion about next steps. That is what the appointment was booked as. I had some pain in that tooth again, and I wanted to know what was going on and what my choices were. I was not prepared for anything beyond that. The dentist came in, had a look, made some comments to his assistant in a tone I could not fully follow, and then said he was going to get me comfortable. I assumed that meant a local anaesthetic for a closer look, which had happened before. I was not alarmed. I trusted the process. What happened next is still somewhat surreal, to me when I think about it. Within a few minutes, and with very little in the way of explanation, my molar was out. He placed it on the tray next to me and said something like, "That needed to come out. You will feel much better now." And then he moved on. His demeanour was completely calm, like this was the most routine thing in the world. I was so caught off guard that I didn't say anything in the moment. I just lay there processing what had just happened. By the time I was sitting upright and he was giving me aftercare instructions, I had this delayed wave of something that I can only describe as a violation of trust. That tooth is gone. It is permanently gone. And nobody asked me if I was ready for that. Nobody walked me through why extraction was the only option. Nobody gave me a moment to consider whether I wanted a second opinion or whether there was anything else we could try first. When I got to my car, I just sat there for a while. I was not in pain, the anaesthetic was still doing its job, but I felt genuinely blindsided. I called my partner from the parking lot, and when I tried to explain what had happened, I started crying, which surprised me because, like I said, I'm not someone who cries easily. It has been several days now and the physical recovery is going fine, but the anger has not gone away. If anything, it has gotten clearer. I did not consent to that extraction in any meaningful way. I was not given information. I was not given a choice. A decision was made about my body, a permanent and irreversible one, without my input, and I do not know what the right next step is. Do I complain formally? Do I find a new dentist and just move on? Do I have any real recourse here? I feel stupid for not speaking up in the moment, but I was just so caught off guard. You do not need to feel stupid. What you're describing is a situation where someone in a position of authority moved faster than you could process, and that kind of thing is disorienting in a way that makes it very hard to respond in real time. The fact that you did not speak up immediately does not mean you consented. Those are two very different things. What happened to you is not okay. Informed consent is a real and important part of any medical or dental procedure, and that means a patient should understand what is being done, why it is being done, and what the alternatives are before something happens, not after. Extracting a permanent tooth is not a small decision. That is irreversible, and you deserve to be part of that conversation. As for what to do now. First, I would get your dental records and the notes from that appointment. You are entitled to those and they will tell you what was documented about the procedure and the reasoning behind it. Second, I would absolutely find a new dentist. Regardless of how the rest of this plays out, you should not be going back to someone you do not trust. As for formal recourse, yes, that is an option. Most places have a dental board or a regulatory body that handles patient complaints, and what you are describing, a procedure carried out without proper informed consent, is exactly the kind of thing those bodies exist for. You may also want to consult with someone who handles patient rights just to understand where you stand. Your anger is valid. Do not let it go to waste. Use it to advocate for yourself. The next email is called, "I stayed at a hotel and they never charged me. Do I say something?" I know this is probably not the kind of email you usually get, and I want to be upfront about that. There is no relationship drama here, no falling out with a friend, no difficult family situation. It is just a straightforward ethical question that I've been sitting with for about 2 weeks now, and I genuinely cannot land on a clear answer, which is why I am writing it out. I am 31 years old. A few weeks ago, I travelled for work and stayed at a hotel for 3 nights. It was not a budget place. The nightly rate was somewhere around $180, so the total for the stay should have been in the region of $540 before taxes and any additional charges. When I checked in, I gave them my card details as you do, and I assumed everything would be processed either during the stay or when I checked out, which is standard. I checked out on a Thursday morning. It was early around 6, and I was in a rush to get to the airport. I did a quick checkout at the front desk. They handed me a printed summary, glanced at it, said thank you, and left. I didn't look at it closely. I was tired and running on not enough sleep, and my focus was entirely on not missing my flight. It was not until I was on the plane and had a moment to sit still that I actually looked at the paper properly. The total at the bottom read $0. I assumed it was an error in the printout and that the actual charge would appear on my bank statement within a day or two, which is sometimes how these things work. That was 2 weeks ago. I have checked my bank account more times than I can count. I have looked at every transaction. There is no charge. Not the full amount, not a partial amount, not even the incidental hold they placed at check-in, which also appears to have been released without anything being drawn. As far as my bank is concerned, that hotel stay was free. So here is where I am stuck. The rational, self-interested part of my brain is saying to leave it alone. It was their mistake. I provided my card. I fulfilled my end of the arrangement. Whatever happened on their end is their administrative problem, not mine. That money is still in my account and my life would be easier with it there than not. But there is another part of me that keeps coming back to it. The hotel has staff, real people who work there, and accounting errors like this can sometimes surface weeks or even months later and come back around in ways that are inconvenient and complicated. There is also just a part of me that does not feel entirely comfortable keeping something that I did not pay for and did not earn. I have not done anything yet. I have just been sitting on it. My partner thinks I should leave it alone and that it is the hotel's problem to catch. My co-worker thinks I should call them. I genuinely do not know who is right. What would you do? Honestly, I find this one kind of refreshing to read because it is such a clean ethical question, with no real villain and no damaged relationship at the centre of it. It is just you trying to figure out the right thing to do, which I respect. Here is my honest take. I would call them. And I say that not because I think you are morally obligated to hand over money that nobody has asked you for, but because of the practical reality of how these things can play out. Hotels do occasionally catch billing errors on their end, sometimes weeks later, and when they do, they can attempt to charge the card they have on file without much warning. Depending on where you are and what the hotel's policies are, that can get messy and inconvenient in ways that are disproportionate to the original amount. Getting ahead of it yourself puts you in control of the situation. There's also just the peace of mind element. You've been checking your bank account obsessively for 2 weeks. That is already costing you something, even if it is just mental energy. Calling them, explaining what happened, and letting them sort it out means you stop thinking about it. Now, your partner is not wrong either. Plenty of people would leave it alone and be completely fine. The hotel has systems for this. It is genuinely possible they catch it themselves and handle it cleanly without it ever becoming your problem. But since you are clearly someone who is going to keep thinking about it either way, I think the call is the move. Do the right thing by your own standard. It sounds like you already know what that is. Thanks for writing in. Let me know how it goes. The next email is named, I want to marry him, but I don't want to move in first. I'm going to start by acknowledging that I already know how this might sound to some people, and I am okay with that. I have thought about this a lot and I feel secure in where I stand. What I am less secure about is how to navigate the conversation around it, and that is the part I need some help with. I am 27 years old, and I have been with my boyfriend for almost 3 years. He is 29. The relationship is serious, and we both know it. We have talked about the future openly, and marriage has come up in a real way, not just hypothetically. I know he is the person I want to be with long term. That part is not the question. The question is about moving in together, which he has started bringing up more and more over the past few months. His position is pretty straightforward. He thinks moving in together is the natural next step, that it makes sense practically and financially, and that it would give us a chance to see how we work in a shared living situation before we commit to marriage. That is a reasonable position. I understand where it comes from, and I do not think he is wrong for wanting that. My position is different. and it comes from a combination of things that I have been trying to articulate clearly enough to explain to him without it turning into a circular conversation. I was raised in a household where certain values around relationships were modelled consistently, not in a rigid or forced way, but in a way that genuinely stuck with me. One of those values is that I would prefer not to live with a partner before marriage. This is not purely religious, though faith is part of my life. It is also just personal. There is something about the idea of that step, of building a home together, that I want to reserve for marriage. It matters to me in a way that is hard to fully put into words, but is very real. I am not asking him to share that value. I am not asking him to pretend it makes sense to him if it does not. What I am asking for is for it to be respected as my boundary, and for us to find a way forward that works for both of us. Here is where it gets more complicated. When I've tried to explain this to him, the conversations have not gone badly exactly, but they have not gone well either. He listens, and then he usually comes back with a version of the same practical argument. That he wants to know we are compatible in a shared living situation before we take an irreversible step. That he has seen friends struggle after getting married without living together first. That this is not about pressure, just about being practical and responsible. And I hear all of that. I genuinely do. But I also feel like my position keeps getting treated as something to be reasoned out of, rather than something to be respected as is. And I do not think that is fair. I love him. I want to marry him. I'm not asking for things to move faster than they should. I'm just asking for the road to get there to look a little different than he has pictured. Is that something couples can actually work through? Or is this the kind of difference that does not have a resolution? I want to be straightforward with you here, because I think you deserve a direct answer rather than a careful one. What you're describing is a values difference, and values differences in relationships are not automatically deal breakers, but they do require both people to genuinely engage with each other's position, rather than just presenting their own argument on repeat. From what you have written, it sounds like the conversations you have been having are less like a real dialogue and more like two people taking turns making their case. That is not the same thing, and it is probably why you keep ending up in the same place. Your boundary is legitimate. Wanting to wait until marriage to live together is a real and valid position, and a partner who loves and respects you should be able to hear that without immediately trying to talk you out of it. That does not mean he has to be thrilled about it, or that his concerns are not also valid. They are. His worry about compatibility in a shared living situation is not unreasonable. But the answer to that concern is not to override what matters to you. The answer is to figure out together what other ways you can build confidence in each other before taking that step. Couples who do not live together before marriage can and do have successful marriages. It is not a guaranteed path to anything bad. What matters more than the living situation itself is how openly and honestly you're able to communicate, and whether you both feel genuinely heard when you raise something important. The fact that your position keeps getting met with another practical counter-argument is worth paying attention to. At some point, the conversation needs to shift from, "Here is why your concern is valid, but here is why I think differently," to, "Okay, I hear you and I respect this, so let us figure out what works for both of us." If he can get there, you have something real to work with. If the only resolution he can accept is the one where you change your mind, that is important information. This next one came in without a clear subject line, so I am going to read it just as it was sent. It starts like this. I do not really know how to title this one, so I am just going to write it and hope it makes sense by the end. I am 23 years old, and I have been with my girlfriend for about a year and a half. She's also 23. Things between us have been genuinely good. Not perfect, because nothing is, but the kind of good that feels steady and real. I trust her. I feel comfortable with her in a way I have not always felt in relationships. I was not expecting what happened last weekend, and I have been carrying it around with me ever since. We had a really nice Saturday, the kind of day that does not have a plan, it just happens well. We went to a market in the morning, picked up some food, and ended up at this park that she had been to as a kid but had not been back to in years. We found a spot under a tree, laid out a blanket, ate, talked about nothing in particular, and it was just one of those afternoons that feels easy in the best way. I remember thinking at some point that I was really happy, like quietly, clearly happy, in a way I wanted to hold on to. On the way home, she was a little quieter than usual. I noticed but didn't push it. She sometimes needs a bit of time to come down from a social day, even when it is just the two of us, and I have learned to give her that without making it mean something. We got back to her place, made some tea and sat on the couch, and after a few minutes she said she wanted to tell me something. She told me that when she was 15 she lost her younger brother. He was 11. It was an illness, one that had been diagnosed a couple of years before he passed. She said that the park we had been to that afternoon was somewhere their family used to go when he was still healthy, before things got hard. She had not been back since he died. She said she had wanted to go back for a long time but had not been ready to do it alone, and that being there with me had felt like the right time. I did not say much. I'm not sure I said the right things. I held her hand and I listened, and I told her I was glad she told me, and that I was glad we went. She seemed okay, not broken open, just quiet and a little raw in the way that talking about something heavy sometimes leaves you. We sat like that for a while, and then the evening moved on in the way evenings do, but I have been sitting with it ever since. Not in a bad way exactly, in a way that feels significant and a little delicate. She shared something with me that she has clearly been carrying for a long time. She chose me to go back to that place with. I feel the weight of that in a way I want to honour, but I'm not entirely sure how. I do not want to bring it up too much and make her feel like I'm treating her differently now. I do not want to not bring it up and have her feel like I did not take it seriously. I don't know what the right balance is, and I care enough about getting it to right that I am writing a stranger on the internet about it. Any thoughts on how to handle this with the care it deserves? I want to start by saying that the fact that you're thinking this carefully about how to show up for her says a lot about who you are in this relationship. A lot of people would have just moved on and not given it a second thought. The fact that you are sitting with it, that you want to get it right, that matters. Here is what I think you might be overcomplicating slightly. You do not need a plan. You do not need a perfectly timed follow-up conversation or a specific set of words. What she needs from you is probably a lot simpler than that, which is just to feel like what she shared landed somewhere safe. And from everything you wrote, it already did. She chose you. She had been waiting until she felt ready to go back to that place, and when she decided it was time, she wanted you there. That is not a small thing, and the fact that you sat with her afterward, that you held her hand and listened without trying to fix anything or fill the silence with the wrong words, that was exactly right. Going forward, you do not need to treat her differently or walk on eggshells around the topic. Just stay open. If she brings it up again, be present for it the same way you were that evening. If she does not bring it up for a while, that is okay too. Grief does not follow a schedule, and she will come back to it in her own time. The one thing I would say is that if a moment comes up naturally, a quiet evening, a conversation that drifts in that direction, it is okay to gently let her know that you are there if she ever wants to talk more about him. Not as a prompt, just as a door left open. Sometimes people just need to know the door is there. You're clearly someone she trusts deeply. Just keep being that. Thanks for writing in. That was a really beautiful one to read. This next email is called I got into my dream university, but my parents want me to stay home. I'm going to try to keep this as clear as possible because there are a lot of moving parts and I do not want to lose the thread of it. I am 18 years old and I've spent the last 2 years working toward one specific goal, getting into a particular university that has a program in my field that is genuinely one of the best in the country. I am not going to name the school, but it is far from where I grew up, about 6 hours by train, and it has been my first choice since I started seriously thinking about what I wanted to study and where I wanted to go. I researched it. I visited the campus once with a friend. I tailored my application around it. I wrote my personal statement with it in mind. It was not a dream in the vague, wishful sense. It was a plan. 3 weeks ago, I found out I got in. My initial reaction was the kind of happiness that does not feel quite real at first, the kind where you read the email 3 times before it lands. I called my best friend before I told anyone in my family, which probably tells you something about the conversation I was anticipating with my parents. I was right to anticipate it. My mother's first response was not congratulations. It was a question about whether the university closer to home had a similar program. My father was warmer in the moment. He did say he was proud of me, but within the same conversation he started talking about costs and distance and how things could be handled differently if I studied locally. By the end of that first evening, what should have been a celebration had turned into something that felt more like a negotiation I had not prepared for. In the weeks since, the position from both of them has become clearer. They do not want me to go. Their reasons are several. The financial aspect is the one they lead with most often. The university I got into is more expensive than the local option, though I have already looked into scholarships and financial aid, and the gap is more manageable than they are treating it. I have tried to show them the numbers, and the conversation always seems to move on before they fully engage with them. The second reason is distance. My mother in particular finds the 6 hours difficult. She has said more than once that she would not be able to get to me quickly if something happened, and I understand that fear on a human level, but I also feel like it is being used as an argument in a way that does not hold up practically. 6 hours is not unreachable. It is a train ride. The third reason is the one that bothers me the most, and it is the one they say the least directly. I think they are scared of me leaving. Not in a malicious way. I think they genuinely love me, and the idea of the house being different without me is something they have not fully come to terms with. I am the oldest, and I think my going away to university has become about more than university in their minds. I have not deferred. I have not declined. I have not agreed to the local option. I am just in this suspended state where every conversation about it ends without a resolution, and I can feel the deadline getting closer. I do not want to hurt my parents. I do not want to leave on bad terms or make them feel like I am choosing a building over them. But I also feel, clearly and quietly, that this is my life. This is the opportunity I worked for, and I'm not sure how to make them understand that without it becoming a fight. Has anyone been through this? Is there a version of this conversation that actually works? First things first, congratulations. Getting into a program you worked that hard for is a real achievement, and it deserved a better first reaction than the one you got. I am sorry that the moment got taken over before you had a chance to actually feel it. Now, here is what I want to say about the situation itself. Your parents love you. That is clear in everything you wrote, even in the parts that are frustrating. The fear your mother has about distance, the way your father pivoted to practicalities, those are not signs that they do not care. They are signs that they care a lot and do not quite know how to handle the fact that you're about to move into a chapter of your life that they are not the centre of. That is a genuinely hard thing for parents to sit with, especially when it happens as quickly as it does at the end of high school. But here is the other thing that is also true. You are 18. This is your life and your education and your future, and you have thought about this carefully and worked toward it deliberately. Those things matter. The discomfort your parents feel about you leaving, as real and as valid as it is not a good enough reason for you to walk away from something you earned. I think the conversation you need to have is one where you stop trying to win the argument on practical grounds. The numbers conversation is not landing because this was never really about numbers. What your parents need to hear is that you love them, that going to this university is not a rejection of them or of home, and that you're not disappearing. 6 hours is a train ride. Holidays exist. Phones exist. The relationship does not end because the distance increases. Try to have that conversation once, clearly and calmly, and then give them a little time to sit with it. Most parents, when they finally accept that their child has made a real and considered decision, come around. It might not be before you leave, it might take a semester, but the pride usually catches up. The final email of the day is titled, "I pushed my friends away and I don't know how to come back from it." I want to start by saying that I am not writing this to make myself the victim of anything. I know what I did. I have known for a while. I am writing this because I have been trying to fix it for months, and I feel like I am running out of road, and I needed to say it somewhere. I am 22 years old. About a year and a half ago, I went through a period that I am not going to fully detail here, but the short version is that I was struggling. Mentally, emotionally, in ways I did not have the vocabulary for at the time and was not handling well. When people are struggling and do not have the tools to deal with it, they sometimes take it out on the people closest to them. That is what I did. My friend group at the time was 4 people, including me. We had been close since the first year of college, the kind of friends where you do not have to make plans, because plans just happen, where you show up to things without needing a formal invitation, where you spend entire weekends together without it feeling like effort. I valued those friendships more than I knew how to say, which is probably part of why I was so careless with them. During that period when I was not doing well, I became someone I do not entirely recognize when I look back. I cancelled on people last minute, repeatedly, without real explanation. I said things during arguments that were sharper than they needed to be, a couple of times genuinely unkind things that I knew would land hard. I went through a stretch where I was so inside my own head that I stopped asking about other people's lives entirely, and I did not notice I was doing it until much later. I was not a good friend. I was not even a particularly decent one for a while. Things didn't end dramatically. There was no single blow-up, no moment where everything fell apart at once. What happened instead was a slow and quiet pulling back. Invitations that used to come automatically started coming less often. Group chats that I used to be in the middle of started moving without me. When I would reach out to make plans, there would be a reason it did not work, and then another reason, and then a response that took a little longer than it used to. I noticed it about 8 months ago, and it hit me harder than I expected. I had spent so long looking inward that I had not seen the distance accumulating until it was already significant. I felt the loss of it immediately and clearly, the way you sometimes do not fully understand the value of something until it is not quite there anymore. Since then I've been trying. I've been more consistent about reaching out. I've been showing up when I am invited to things, which does happen occasionally, just less than it used to. I have been trying to be present and engaged and genuinely interested in their lives in a way that I was not before. I apologized to 2 of them directly, real apologies, the kind where you name the specific thing you did and do not make it about yourself. One of those conversations went reasonably well. The other was polite but felt a little hollow. But despite all of that, 8 months in, the invitations are still fewer than they were. I am still on the outside edge of things in a way I was not before. I do not think they hate me. When I am with them, it feels mostly okay, not fully relaxed the way it used to be, but okay. It just feels like there is a gap that I opened up and I cannot quite close it, no matter what I do. I'm not sure if I am being impatient. I am not sure if I have done enough. I am not sure if there is a point where you have to accept that some damage is permanent. I just know that I miss them, and that I'm tired of feeling like I am on the outside of my own friendships looking in. The level of self-awareness in that email is something, and I mean that sincerely. Most people in your position would be writing a very different version of this, one where the friends are the problem, and the distance is something that happened to you, rather than something you contributed to. The fact that you are not doing that you have sat with your own role in this honestly and without softening it, that actually matters. Here is the hard thing I want to say, and I want to say it gently. 8 months is not that long. What you described, the cancellations, the sharpness, the period of being so absent from their lives that you stopped asking about them, that accumulated over a long time. It didn't build up in 8 months, and it is probably not going to fully repair in 8 months either. Trust, especially among friends, tends to come back more slowly than it left. That is not a punishment. It is just how people work. The fact that the invitations still come, even if they come less often, tells you something important. They have not closed the door. They are still including you, still letting you show up, still being okay when you're there. That is not nothing. That is actually a decent foundation to keep building on. What I would not do is push too hard or too visibly. There is a version of trying to repair a friendship that starts to feel like pressure to the other person, and if they sense that your effort is about relieving your own guilt more than it is about genuinely reconnecting, it can slow things down rather than speed them up. Just keep being the person you're trying to be. Consistently, without expectation, without keeping score. Let the reliability speak for itself over time. The 2 conversations you had, the real apologies, those were the right call. If there is a third person you have not spoken to directly yet, that conversation is probably still worth having when the moment feels right. You asked if there is a point where you have to accept that some damage is permanent. Maybe. But I do not think you are at that point yet. Keep going. Thanks for writing in. I am rooting for you. And that is it for this video. Thank you for listening.